we are down to our top 10 Amiga racing games of all time. And just to give you some flavour of the games which also ran parallel to this list in the bottom 10 collection, well, I choose this one. First of all, this is Nigel Mansell's World Championship, and I bought this close to the day of release at full price. So let's just check this game out and see how bad that really is. Apart from the bad handling, the unrecognisable circuits and crashing into bales of hay dotted around the circuit, this game isn't very flattering to the Amiga, and perhaps this great sky texturing and the clouds is the best thing about the game. Lots of bike racing games on the Amiga, and here we are with another one. This is 1000cc Turbo, and so for this we'll probably choose a non-turbo bike at the beginning of this game. This game is better than Harley Davidson that you remember we saw in one of these comparison lists, but it's only just better, as you can see. Returning back to four wheels, we find the 1000 Milia, and in this game we travel in an old retro car which was constructed perhaps in the 1920s, and we have to race along an old racetrack at high speed. The graphics may be very fast and very playable, but unfortunately the controls sometimes leave something to be desired, because you can't always judge the correct speed to go around every corner, and if you slow down too much then you'll stop in the middle of that road. And that means it's very hard for beginners, so let's move on to a slightly different game. This is 4x4 off-road racing, and now we get to drive a somewhat larger vehicle along a somewhat rougher racetrack, and for this we'll have to choose our vehicle at the beginning of the game and then walk up and down this street and outfit our car, and finally we can get going and set off on our journey. In this game we can bounce around that road like a maniac, and we can perform lots of stunts as well, but that will damage our vehicle and it will also use up some fuel. And in this game it's hard enough to get to the checkpoint and to refuel, but you can see the road texturing is pretty well done, and I guess the sound effects aren't too bad. Some of these games have been recorded in a wider screen view than was originally intended. You can see with 5th gear it is a pretty small screen, but thanks to WinUAE we can stretch that to full screen aspect ratio. But unfortunately it doesn't help the game play one little bit. Just in case you thought we'd forgotten, no, we certainly haven't forgotten about Crazy Cars 1, which is definitely there on the Amiga. Unfortunately, the controls and the system involved with driving the car is pretty difficult. on to slightly better territory. Here's Badlands, and this is another Tengen conversion handled through our favourite tech software, and as you can see they haven't really done a bad job of the arcade conversion. This is another Super Sprint clone, and if you needed any more inspiration that this was Super Sprint, it gives us the exact same spanners which will fix our car, and this gives us a futuristic spin on what was a pretty shady arcade rip-off of that original concept. With lots of tracks on offer and lots of weird things which can happen, like, well, this junction, we can crash into each other. And on this particular screen we can crash into that volcano, as you can see me doing now, and that will eject a puff of smoke, which is very nice. And Badlands got 67% on the Lemon database. Number 10 in our countdown of the top 50 Amiga racers of all time, as voted for by you, is this one. It's Macro Machines. Developed and coded by former budget label Codemasters and released in 1993. We get to choose our character and 3 other opponents on the first course, which is a practice run, which serves as a warm-up for the actual league, and this takes the form of powerboat racing along and around a bathtub where you can see rubber ducks and bubbles, and it's our job to beat those opponents. Up, whilst we enjoy this Matt Simmons format music, we get to choose our opponents, and so I will choose the weediest and fattest opponents for this course and hope that we get around it and complete this race. Stepping out of that bathtub, it's breakfast time, and so you will find beans and waffles and of course Cheerios and the odd orange dotted around this track as we race around the kitchen table, avoiding milk and waffles and beans. Macro Machines begins fun, and it really encourages the player to progress in the game and find out what the next course is going to hold, and it's not long before the player finds that and gets to move on. Off to the races we go in another set of little cars, and you can see that we've won and managed to get a car in the cabinet, and it's our job to collect all those cars, but in the meantime we have to win those races, and this particular race really sorts out the players who can drive from the also-rans, because it's difficult and it will require some memorising to get around it, not least because of a bridge which throws us off it into the dirt underneath this desk. If it wasn't for this small detail, then this game would be an absolute joy to play, and after this the later levels are more fun and you fly around in helicopters and that kind of thing, and it really is a great game. But this level is not for the faint-hearted, and you can't take any shortcuts either. You'll have to follow the racing line, and you'll have to overtake those guys. And yes, you can jump over books to gain some height, but if you miscalculate your run, then you might as well press escape and try this level all over again. If you can master this, then you can master the whole game, and it's not too difficult, and this compares with Supercars that we've seen already, and it's just another version of Supercars, which is another version of Sprint, and so it's the same formula, and yes, this game actually gives us the chance to catch up, as long as we don't make any of those mistakes. All we have to do is to qualify in first or second position to move on to that very next track, and having done that we can move on, and it's a totally different experience because now we get to work in the tool shed and we have to avoid oil and glue spots and rusty nails and bolts everywhere, and of course pencils, and those glue spots will slow us down and those oil spots will spin us out, much like supercars. Micro Machines is fun, it is playable, it is deep and it is hard, and it will take some time to master, but many fans have raved about this, and that's why it is holding that high position of number 10 in our top 50 countdown, and it currently holds an amazing score of 79% on the 11 Amiga database. Number 9 in our top 50 countdown is Lotus III The Ultimate Challenge, designed by Magnetic Fields and published by Gremlin Graphics in 1992. Lotus 3 features a whole new range of brand new courses, including the Future course, where we can zoom along the road using a turbo zone, and that replaces the turbo pills that were found in Lotus 2. Lotus 3, we can choose either continual track mode like Lotus 2 or circuit mode like Lotus 1, and we get easy, medium and hard of those, so there really is an absolute wealth of tracks on offer built into this game, but also there is a random course generator, and there's also a construction kit where you can virtually control the options on every track, and you can drive around any track with the number of variations on offer. But you can see the new features include wind, and this was borrowed heavily in other driving games, and you can see that this game actually runs fast and smooth, and this is actually being played on the Amiga 500. That's a checkpoint! And unfortunately there are no voice speech sound effects in this game because, well, they had to squeeze this down onto 2 discs, and this game still makes a meal of the Amiga 1200 chipset, and really they had to produce a bug fix version eventually to make this game speed up just a little bit. Old favourites such as the fog course return, and you can see that the fog is identical to Lotus 2, but it gives us all those new tracks to race around, and it also gives us a little bit of variety as well, with a whole new range of tracks, including brand new cliff levels, brand new roadworks levels, brand new futuristic levels, and also brand new rally levels as well, where you can play 1 and 2 player action. With 2 players you can have double the fun, and it's great because you can knock each other off and watch each other as you glide around these corners, and hopefully you can make it along to that line. And you can see in this particular level we have fuel to deal with, another carryover from Lotus 1, and that means that we'll have to stop and fuel in eventually, and that's great. It means some tactics are involved and it's not just random driving. Handling and the controls are also slightly different, and on this particular level you'll find yourself slip sliding around just like on the snow level, and of course on the desert you'll find yourself a little bit slow due to the nature of the course. Perhaps the area where the Magnetic Fields crew really pushed the Amiga was definitely with the cliff levels, and these cliff levels slow down the machine just a little bit, especially noticeable in 2-player mode, and this was definitely one of the bug fixes that they bug fixed for the fixed version. Lotus 3 is a constant challenge, and I had many hours of fun playing this, and I certainly went out and bought it on the day of release. It was quite expensive and quite a big box, but unfortunately one of the downsides is there is a concept car included with the game. That is the 3rd Lotus, and the 3rd Lotus being a concept car is pretty rare, but it's also pretty slow. So if you want to make headway, it's best to choose the Lotus Esprit, and I think it gives us the option to change cars and the soundtrack at the beginning of each level. So much on offer that most of it was ripped off by ex-Gremlin core design team when they created Jaguar XJ220, it's clear that the Lotus series really did make their mark on history, and this game in particular tried to stretch it as far as it would go. After this they moved on to pure rally championship games, which were very widely appealing, and their heritage on the Amiga is given away by the 79% score for this particular game. 8 we find Crazy Cars 3, developed by the French Titus team and released through Titus Worldwide in 1992. Crazy Cars 3 we get to repair our vehicle and also upgrade and tune it before we enter one of a large number of races per league, and there are 4 huge leagues in the entire game, so it will take you quite some time to get through those, and at the end of each league it will give us another special bonus section which we should reach if we manage to qualify off this course in one piece. The aim of each level is to beat all our opponents and hopefully return over that line in first position. You can see we're in position 9 at the moment, and perhaps one of the hardest things is bumping into the back of other vehicles. And you can see a police checkpoint there, and if we stop then we'll get fined, and sometimes at the end of the level we'll get fined as well for speeding and reckless driving. But apart from that, it's time to put our foot down and drive hell for leather and try to get to that first position. Just like Test Drive 2, the police will be harassing us at every given opportunity, and also the corners will throw us off the road as well, but as you can see we managed to make it in first position, and that's all we needed to do. After that we are treated to the results section where we can see our new championship points, and of course those are important because we really want to reach the end of that championship and take on the special bonus mission at the end, and as you can see it also rewards us some cash as well which we can spend in that shop. Being the end of the league division, we'll have to buy some tickets for the grand finale, and as you can see that is now unlocked, and as you can also see we have a bit of spare cash available, so we can buy a turbo if we really wanted to do that. And the turbos in this game are a bit of a waste of time because they are very expensive and sometimes a bit pointless, but here we go, let's just try that. This is the end of division challenge. The aim of this stage is to weave among all the big rigs and knock off all the skulls, and they will give us a tiny few points, and if you choose the correct lane you should be able to squeeze by those, and the time limit is very tight, and we shouldn't need to use the turbo unless it's an absolute emergency and we end up crashing into the entire pack. But it's the art of weaving in amongst the traffic, and sometimes weaving into the oncoming lane is a very bad thing to do, and you are better sticking to the following traffic. Luckily, even though some races can go on for quite some time, this division challenge is fairly short, and even though the time is ticking down, we are actually approaching the line, and that means that we should be able to make it without a turbo and move up from the 4th league up to League 3. In Division 3 we'll find a whole new batch of races, and there are quite some to go at. and of course we'll find a whole new batch of upgrades as well. So for this, let's buy the tyres and the engine tune and the brakes as well, and hopefully that will give us some kind of advantage. You can see our money goes down to virtually nothing, and that means that we can only enter the one race, and that means that we have to win it in order to progress. And you can see the graphics are crisp and very fast, and you can see as well that there are lots of opponents on the screen, and you can't take these courses very lightly, otherwise you'll be off that road. There are also some very fast downhill sections, and there are some bonus cones to knock over as well, and let's also activate that turbo and check that out. Yes, it is possible to use that turbo, and yes, we are careering off that road, so yes, we're going to drop down back in the ranks again, all the way down in those places. So no, the turbo is not appreciated, but yes, this game is with a massive 80% on that Lemon database, and it was so good that they even released Lamborghini American Challenge, which was basically the exact same game renamed. But whatever you call this game, it is very fast, it is very slick, and it is one of my favourite racers on the Amiga. Number 7 in our list, we have Vroom, developed by French creators Lankhor and published by them in 1991. Vroom is a very fast game, and it really does appreciate a nice fast CPU. Back in the day I had an old 30 connected to my Amiga 500, as unlikely as that may seem, so this was actually the game speed that I played it on back in the day, and with the old 30 this game really shines, it's really fast, and it even tries to overshadow the legendary Jeff Crammond Formula 1 Grand Prix. It's certainly an arcade racer, and I have massive esteem for this game. Even with a large number of faults and flaws, it is immensely playable. We can get away with bumping another car, but if we touch that landscape just one little bit, then we'll crash out and our wheel will fall off, and that means we'll have to catch up to all the other racers, and so for that reason it is paramount not to touch any of the roadside objects and to slow down and avoid crashing at all costs. And as we move on to this second track, you can see some very tight corners that we'll have to take at top speed, and we'll have to weave between the slow cars and knit our way through those in order to get around to that line. Because of the old 30, you can see the graphics flashing just a little bit, but you can also see some detail in the driver's cockpit, including our speed and also our damage counter. And when the damage counter flashes orange, unfortunately that's time to pull into the pits, and we'll either have to press the T key to change all 4 tyres, and we can also press the F key to fuel in as well. The controls in Vroom are ultimately amazingly responsive, and so are the brakes, and once the player has memorised these tracks they should be able to career around those at very high speed, and it is very thrilling to do that. And And on this particular course, the road moves into a very narrow one-lane section where you have to really be careful through there, otherwise it's a write-off and it's very difficult to catch up. But you can see threading the needle means that we can move at high speed all the way around this course. And it's important to do that because you can see on the instrument panel above the screen we have yet to qualify, and when one of those cars turns red, then that means that we've passed enough vehicles to qualify onto that next circuit. By the time we get around to lap 4, things haven't really improved all that much as we thread the needle yet again, and we make a mistake as well, which doesn't really help matters. On this particular circuit we can turn right here at full speed, and that is very thrilling as we enter another section which requires us to slow down just a little bit as we go under that bridge. But when you do manage to qualify and you do manage to get there just in time, as you can see just under that line, then it's an amazing feeling. The controls are really great in this game, the tracks are really great and really responsive, and you don't go flying off the circuit at every given opportunity. The tyres grip and the wings work, and driving around this game in an arcade racer fashion is usually the most thrilling experience, unless of course you crash into the side, and then sometimes it's one failure after the other. Like all great racing games, this game actually allows the player to catch up, and as you can see, even if we make a write-off of the very first lap, we can still catch up, and you can see this is lap 1 and we are still losing places to crashing into very, very slow drivers, and a very, very slow driver will actually collide with us at point blank range. If we are driving too quickly, the computer will actually fire a slow driver at us, and ordinarily the rest of the time it's important to not crash into the pit lane, and getting in and out of that pit lane is a nightmare at the best of times. Vroom, as well as the Vroom data disc, is one of my favourite racers of all time, and it was my favourite racer of all time for some time, but now it has been replaced with other games, beginning with L, but of course this being a Formula 1 game, I love it, and it has an average score of an amazing 79% on the Lemon Amiga database. Number 6 in our countdown, we find Super Cars 2, developed by Magnetic Fields and published by Gremlin Graphics in 1991. Super Cars 2 is the sequel to Super Cars 1, and you can see that they've improved the graphics, the car handling has improved as well, and the cars are just a little bit smaller than they were on Super Cars 1, which means we can get around the track just a little bit easier, but if we collide with the corners we can get stuck just the same. So great driving and just a bit of luck is essential, and if we get past we'll unfortunately lose places just like this, so we'll have to re-overtake those cars and get ourselves into that third position so that we qualify onto that next track. The aspect of money is also very important, and in between the tracks we will gain an opportunity perhaps to gain some money, including talking to the lawyer, the animal rights activist, the police officer and also the press officer, and getting these questions right or wrong could give us a lot of money. And you can see no comment there. Sometimes it's not very easy, but sometimes you can walk away with a fortune and then repair our vehicle and tune it up with the best forward missiles that money can buy. In this case, let's buy a few upgrades, and let's buy a couple of engine upgrades and some shields and some bumpers as well, which means we don't take much damage, and we can find some very nice surround missiles which are very cheap. And in this game it's the elements of stockpiling missiles and weapons and then selling those again in the shop, and this means that the economy behind the scenes is brilliant and means that we can afford things well in advance. Supercars 2, we can ram into cars and they will blow up, and we can also fire things into cars and they will blow up just like this, and we can also lay down mines, and we can jump over cars with a nitro boost similar to Knight Rider, and we can do all kinds of things like that, and even shove those into trains and make those collide into obstacles. If in doubt, always bully your way through and always bang your way into the next position, and perhaps even let the other cars drive over landmines, although there is a way to protect us against those as well. So this game is random, but not as random as Supercars 1. It gives the player the power to combat every single one of these courses. And on some of the later courses you may even find yourself going too quickly to make these corners. And the corners are pretty tight, but there is only one car in this game, unfortunately, and that's perhaps one of the major drawbacks. In Supercars 1 we had 3 cars, and upgrading cars is always fun. But in this it's good that we have a very well steering vehicle which glides us through, and you can see on this very first course it warms the player up with very easy controls and a very easy track to memorise. The game even features caricatures of Harrison Ford and Nancy Allen from RoboCop, and you can see some stats as well, including a spinning car, which was, well, the Lotus series had another spinning car, and this car is actually modelled on a very real car, the Alfa Romeo SZ, and the Alfa Romeo is a very nice car indeed, and it was also used in Supercars 1. I think although we cannot hear any of the other drivers, our vehicle sounds are good, and the bumping and crashing is good, and there is no music either, but I think these amazing Andrew Morris graphics make up for a lot, the playability makes up for a lot, and the handling, and of course the destructibility in this game cannot be underestimated, and wasn't really beaten until Psygnosis Roll Cage came along for the PS1, and that all means that this game gets an incredible 84% on the Amiga database.